us. All of us are product of the Western education system, Western universities, Western academia, Western structural way of knowledge. We need to liberate ourselves. We need to detox our minds from that and go, not back, I don't want to say get, but go forward into something which we could call Islamic, but Islamic not necessarily in a historical traditional sense, but Islamic in a futuristic sense as well, because I do believe that Islam resides in the future. We have been going through a lot of historical moments during the last few decades. In my opinion, the last century, in fact, from the 1917 until today, we have gone through one of the most important transformations that this Ummah has witnessed during the 14th centuries. And I call this century, last century, the century of humiliation, in reference to the century of humiliation that the Chinese experienced in the 19th century when they were invaded, divided, and humiliated by international powers. The point which I would like to raise here, and why I call it the century of humiliation, because the lack of continuity of what we are. When we say we are the Ummah, this concept of Ummah, which in my opinion is the genome, the DNA of the not only the spiritual connection, the brotherhood connection, the community links amongst Muslims across the world, but I always view Ummah beside all of that as a geopolitical concept, as an institutionalized concept that kept the consensus and created a center of gravity, political center of gravity, where this Ummah kept its shape and power and protected itself. This is what we are. This is what this Islamic world is, in fact. And when we went through the dismantling of the concept of Khilafah, and later on the rise of the so-called nation state, which I always argue that we do not truly have nation states in the Islamic world in particular, or at least most of our states post-colonial era are not indeed nation states in the official Westphalian definition of nation state, as in the European culture. When that architecture was established, we automatically lost the consensus, we lost the continuity with our tradition and history in political and geopolitical concept. We lost as well the power of protecting each other, because if you are living among the Muslim in the Islamic world during the golden era of Islam, even if you are living in a sultanate or an emirate, which is different from others, but the concept of Ummah was politically there. So you are a citizen of the Ummah, regardless of the land or even the governor that you are living under. For example, when Ibn Battuta traveled in the 13th century across the Islamic world, he traveled from Tanja, but he found himself, for example, a judge in a country like Maldives. He might find himself an ambassador of India to China. He found himself, a governor of certain provinces in various Islamic countries. No one asked about the identity of that person as far as the land that he belongs to or the government that controls that land. He was a member of the Ummah. Technically, he became entitled to travel anywhere, to live anywhere, to be part of any administrative structure without any discrimination. That is one of the most powerful concepts, in my opinion, does not exist anywhere else in any culture or civilization. And the second most important element, which we lost during the last century, is the continuity of knowledge. This Ummah was the reservoir of truth. Al-Ummah Mustawda' al-Haq. This Ummah was the generator of values and knowledge, whereby if this knowledge and value our ability to also become part of this international order, where we were, to a large extent, not only part of it, but for 8 centuries at least, we were the dominant factor in the international system, and we were able to define the international law, the law of the seas, the law of communication, the law of diplomacy, and a lot of laws of economy. We lost all of that because we replaced this magnificent, beautiful structure with something else that prefers fragmentation, partition, competition, and conflict over unity and over continuity. This is extremely important concept. Why I'm saying this? Is it surprising to us, the current position of the Islamic world or the states, Muslim states, I mean the political leadership of the Muslim world regarding Gaza? For me, it is not. Because this architecture actually has been designed in order to reach to this moment, whereby we as Muslim world loses the essence of our political influence. It's amazing to what extent the Islamic world politically at this moment in time is insignificant in the world order, insignificant in the calculation of balance of power, insignificant in the way that the Americans or the Israelis or whoever is taking them into consideration. The leaders of the Muslim world met in Saudi Arabia at the beginning of this of Gaza war, and they decided that the siege of Gaza should be broken, and they decided that they are going to take severe actions in order to stop the ongoing genocide in Gaza. What happened since then? Nothing. Even the committee that was established, the 7 countries that's supposed to follow up on these kind of regulation recommendations, they did not meet. Technically, they did not meet. So, what are we losing at this moment in time? We are losing not only our possibility as an ummah to be part or to shape or to enforce the interests of the Muslim world in a chaotic international order. And you know, the international order itself is based on power, balance of power, not based on morality or ethics. This is the Western-centric philosophy of governing the world. It is not based at all on anything called values beside the values that serve power. This is why when we were, to a large extent, some of us were deceived by the liberal values, always we were arguing the liberal values are magnificent when you are implementing them for your own interest. And this is what the West are doing. But when it comes to us, the liberal values are not implemented. Even the international law. No one talks about international law at this moment in time, including the Americans who are trying to get rid of that. So we are living in another order where it's rules-based order. And these rules are defined by the powerful, regardless of the ethics or values or liberalism or regardless of the international law, which I think the Americans are the best to ignore and to marginalize. This is number one. So we are suffering, but the whole world is suffering. It is not only us. I think we are the latest comers to the scene. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Africa, which suffered much more than us through slavery and colonialism. I'm talking about the Congo that lost 10 million people because of Belgium colonialism. I'm talking about North Africa. I'm talking about the massacres in Namibia and in Tanzania. I'm talking about many other incidents that Africa has suffered from. I'm talking about Latin America as well. South America that has suffered the exploitation, the eradication, the genocide of the indigenous people in North Africa as well, in Australia, and in New Zealand. We came late into the scene. But for the last 300 years, the Western-centric world order has been committing all kinds of issues, crimes against actually humanity and genocides everywhere. And this is when the Israelis do what they are doing in Gaza. I think that is technically in line of the heritage and culture that the Western-centric approach to power, this is important, and to the world governance is actually, so the Israelis cannot say, but you know what, we have done it, and you did it before us. Okay, you might apologize here and there, we will apologize one day as well, but technically speaking, we are following your track. This is number one. Second, this is why I'm saying here, our ummah And by saying our ummah here, I don't mean the political ruling elite. I am talking about people. I'm talking about those who still have the ummah in their hearts and the values of the ummah in their hearts and the interest of the ummah in their hearts. I mean those who are influencers, influencing the ummah, the young generation of the future, people who have any say. I think they should take this matter seriously. We should come together in an alliance with everyone in the world who have suffered from this Western-centric approach to power, and I mean the Global South in particular. And when I say the Global South, I don't mean physically the South of the globe, but I mean as well those who are living in the margin, those who are representing new values, those who are not happy with exploitation and warmongering that the Western civilization has been advocating, including Europeans, Americans, and everyone, anyone else living anywhere in the world. This is an important idea for me at this moment in time. Post-Gaza, this ummah should wake up to the fact that this is a continuous struggle. It is not only a struggle for Gaza, it's not a struggle to end the genocide. It is a struggle to shift the world order into another order, whereby all of us are partners in it. And therefore, we have allies. We have allies in South Africa, we have allies in Brazil, we have allies everywhere in the world, and we have allies in America, we have allies amongst the Jews as well, who have started to see the danger that the current genocide of an apartheid state could do to the future of the Jews in the world. And we should welcome them into this camp, because it is very important for all of us to establish this global alliance around certain values. And these values are not values of exploitation and monopoly of power. These are the values of sharing proper and just and equal system for all of us. This is number one. Second, the schism between the ruling elite and the people of this ummah, the members, the ordinary people, the masses, the population of this ummah is increasing. And Gaza has pushed it even further. What does this mean? We have witnessed during the last few decades that whenever there is a massive, departure from the interest of the ummah towards the West, I mean the elite, moving towards the West, ignoring the interest of the ummah, something happens. Some form of rejection, anger, frustration, creates also forms of rebellion. And sometimes it is negative, in a form of extreme ideologies that create for all of us unwelcomed, distraction from real issues, because it is a matter of anger that goes beyond control and leads into unnecessary, or a lot of complications, or it could lead into awareness, why? Into a proper introspection in the way that we think about the world, in the way that we perceive the balance of power. And my task at this moment in time, I'm sure many others have other dimensions, but I am concerned about the concept of the strategy and geopolitics. And I do believe that we have massive lack of understanding of the concept of balance of power, on the concept of strategy and geopolitics, and we need to be aware of what's happening in the world and to have our own theories that are based on our own values that our Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us the concept of وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, mercy for humanity. That the fact that the Prophet ﷺ is not but a messenger for everyone in the world, the global concept of this mission. These are important. These are at the core concept of what Islam is. These were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca in the first days of the revelation. So this is, we need to take into consideration. But here I'm concerned about this gap. This gap is growing between the political elite and the people. And this will generate difficulties, complications, revolutions, turbulence, and might be chaos. It could be very negative, but it could be converted through the effort of intellectuals, through the effort of people who have influence, converted into a new revolution of why, consciousness, a new revolution of understanding reality and responding to it without losing patience, and without also going beyond certain boundaries and responding to this, because it might fire back. And then a lot of people who are in war with the Muslims at this moment in time will use that as an ammunition against Muslims in various parts of the world. So we need to be very careful how to manage the current situation. Now, the third point, which is very important for us, beside the alliance with the South, beside the fact that we need to manage the current reality and the aftermath in a very cautious way, but also in a very clear way. The third one, there is a need now to introduce a value system to the world based on something different from the conventional or the new liberal values that have been utilized as tools of hegemony and power and subjugation during the last few decades. The world is sick and fed of that. And I mean the world, it means we all, everywhere, are suffering from it. But the alternative is not ready. The geopolitical center of the West, the centric nature of the Western way of looking at the world, and has created in us, all of us are product of the Western education system, Western universities, Western academia, Western structural way of knowledge. We need to liberate ourselves. We need to detox our minds from that and go, not back, I don't want to say get, but go forward into something which we could call Islamic, but Islamic not necessarily in a historical traditional sense, but Islamic in a futuristic sense as well, because I do believe that Islam resides in the future, not necessarily in the past. So we need to go forward into something that we could migrate to, and we should be critical of modernity that has led us and led the world into the current moment, led the world in the current climate change, led the world to the current poverty, the current manipulation of power and centralization of wealth. So we need to be aware of the fact that we, while we are developing the alternative, are in fact infected, sometimes in a subtle way, with the modern values. And when I say here modern, I mean modernity through objectivism and Western methodology that is devoid from purpose, higher purpose, devoid from al-ghaya, that we as Muslims believe that we have in every action we do, there is an ibadah part of it, there is a ghaya, a purpose for it, which to go higher and higher and to be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The current methodology is not working, and we need to develop a new methodology, a new theory, a new way of thinking, a new value-centered approach to reality, politics, international politics, economics, and it should be international in nature, but also we need to be aware that it should not be, again, colonized mentally by the modern Western values that we have been unfortunately infected by to a large extent. And I'm speaking here about our universities, our academia, our books, our way of thinking. So, for example, when we speak about the new theory of politics, and we start by Max Weber, then we move into, we speak about Hobbes and whatever, as if the past did not exist. This world, the Muslims were there for 1,000 years, and they governed, and they had international presence, and they did not have a theory? How did they manage? So the Western civilization during the last 300 years introduced us all the theories of international relations and of politics. But what happened before that? Did the world manage itself without any concept? I think we need to be very careful when we study, even in the current academia and in the current methodologies, to be aware of the fact that the Western way of thinking has monopolized truth and has detached the history of nations outside the center from the current mainstream academia and current mainstream way of thinking. We need to be aware of that. And then I conclude by saying, and this is the last one, hope. So things are difficult. In Gaza at this moment in time, we have ongoing genocide in front of us, acknowledged, unfortunately, by the American administration and supported by many other European countries, including Germany and Britain and so on and so forth. And that kind of scene is so bloody, so dramatic, so depressing, to an extent that some of us, a lot of us, have gone through, maybe depression or verge or edge of depression. Remember that it is a war between justice purely and injustice. It is a war between power and will. And our Prophet, peace be upon him, went through all the phases. Today, the people in North Gaza are dying out of hunger. Our Prophet ﷺ, in Sha'b Abi Talib, he was besieged and he got hungry, himself and his companions. And if anyone in the world should have not gone through that, it would be the Prophet ﷺ, who is the most beloved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he went through it. And he worked through reality until he built a new reality in the world. And when he migrated to Medina, in no time, I mean in 10 years, he was able to establish the biggest geopolitical shift that humanity has ever seen. It was in 634 to 36 that the two massive empires of that time, the Persians and the Romans, who controlled the world for centuries, were actually replaced, at least in Iraq and in Syria and Egypt and many other parts of the world, with a new emerging civilization, not only state, a new emerging ummah. And this is what the Prophet called us. He did not call what happened in Medina a state. He did not call what happened an empire. He called us ummah in the document of Medina. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He called us ummah. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas. That ummah surprised the world with something that the world has never seen before. And in no time, that civilization was able to convert the entire world order into a new world order based on the new values. And it introduced some concept which never existed in any empire before that, which is the equality, the true equality and justice amongst people. Muslims, Jews, Christians, non-Muslims, non-Jews, not anyone. Because every empire until that moment in time was built on two principles: the monopoly of wealth and the centralization of power. Our civilization, when it came to replace that order, it was built on sharing wealth equally with people and also on sharing power. And that model survived for 1,000 years. This is why we have a lot of rich history to refer to, a lot of values to bring into our current modern life and to build on it something that not only Muslims but the entire globe could benefit from. So Gaza is a reminder that we have a huge task. And those who are angry now because of Gaza, I don't want them tomorrow to feel, okay, Gaza is resolved, people are getting some food and everything is going to be fine. This is a start of a real, serious transformation that has been delayed for 1 century at least. And if we don't pick up now and move on, another second Gaza and third Gaza, and this time it might not be in Gaza itself, it could be anywhere in the world, is going to happen. And the humanity will continue to suffer. So let us start this process and let us develop our alliances and let us move beyond our small petty differences to see the big picture and to develop a new approach to the world and to our, inshallah ta'ala, future. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.